Welcome to episode 29 of the Practice Squad, a show where we talk about football and make the replacement refs look like pros. I'm your host and fourth string quarterback, Jeremy, joined each and every week by my co host and backup long snapper, Joseph. How's it going, man?
Hey, what did I say a few months ago? That we might be doing Bengals Dolphins game of the week, and look what happened.
There you go. We committed. We committed to watching the two hot garbage teams go at it. So we'll be talking about that later. We are live right here on YouTube every other Monday night during the regular season at sometime late in the evening. We're being wishy-washy this year. This is actually our last regular season episode of the year. Next week, we will be doing a post-week 17 pre-playoff show where we'll be doing all sorts of hot takes about the final week of the season, all the playoff pictures, everything. So make sure to tune in next week, probably next Monday night. But tonight we've got so much awesome stuff planned. We're going to be talking about our two games of the week from weeks 15 and 16. We've got highlights. We're going to talk about Pro Bowl rosters. We're going to talk about the process for selecting the Pro Bowl rosters. We're going to talk about guys that were snubbed. We're going to talk about the MVP. We're going to talk about our quick cap, talk about the Niners a little bit, talk about some Dolphins. We're going to do our commentators say the darndest things. And finally, we're going to wrap up our show with the very last predictions of the 2019 NFL regular season. So let's go ahead and get started with our game of the week for week 15, an exciting one. Actually, we had two good ones. I'll give credit to both games. We had two good games of the week the last 2 weeks. Texans at Titans is our first one, week 15. So everybody rewind your brains by a week. Texans win 24-21. I'll give a couple thoughts, and I'm going to throw it to Joseph. So I saw lots of athletic plays in this game. There were lots of really great catches, some awesome turnovers, that interception in the end zone by Kenny Vaccaro. Never heard of the guy, but he looked great in the end zone. Merciless, that awesome bounce fumble that ended up in Merciless hands. They called it an interception. I think it was actually a fumble technically, but it went on the scoreboard as an interception. Ran back for 86 yards. That was awesome. And then the Texans had a moment where they swatted down 3 passes in a row. One of them was on a fake punt. That was awesome.
Yeah,
I love the athleticism. It was a true division game. I see this so often, and even if you don't care about the teams that you're watching, like I don't really care about the Titans that much. I don't really care about the Texans that much. But when you've got two at least mediocre teams that are in the same division that are playing for playoff spots, it's almost always going to be a fun game to watch. Like those teams, they play each other hard. And even if you're not invested in them, it's still a fun game to watch. This was a really fun game to watch. I thought that Houston moved the ball well. Watson was pretty accurate. He had a 70% completion percentage. He had a pretty good day. And then Carlos Hyde, who was kicked off the Niners roster in 2017, was picked up by the Browns and then went to, I think, to some other team and then to the Texans finally. Found a good home this year. He's had the best year of his best season of his career. He had a 100-yard game on Sunday. And then lastly, and I know Joseph is going to have some thoughts on this, but man, Tannehill looked pretty sharp, man.
I was gonna. All right.
Yeah, I'll let you get into that, but he looked pretty good in the pocket. Now, granted, he had lots of good protection. He had lots of oh, I have a year to throw this ball, but and the one interception he had was not his fault at all. It was a ball that was caught and then jostled out of the guy's hands. So he had a good game, and he's been good for the Titans. So where was that Tannehill in Miami? Joseph, that's my question to you. Where was that Tannehill in Miami?
Yeah, the comment I have about Tannehill in this game was he looked so assertive or aggressive and
Yes.
alert,
Yes.
and he was risky. He wasn't super conservative or weak or unwilling to make a big throw or play, and just he had a tenacity that I hadn't seen in 7 years with the Dolphins. There would have been one, he was willing to run the ball. And even though he was faster, because he used to actually, I think I told you this, in college for a bit, he started as a wide receiver. So he must have had speed and athleticism. And he didn't quarterback until I think his last year in college. So, and he's bulked up. I could tell he's gotten bigger. I guess he finally hit the weight room, but he was willing to run. He had this one play, though it wasn't a gain. It was a very smart play. Do you remember? I think it was 2nd and 10 later in the game, and he's going to get sacked. And as he's like falling down backwards, he still somehow gets rid of the ball towards.
Oh
Derrick
yeah,
Henry.
yeah. He gets rid of the ball. It lands right at a guy's feet, and it counts as an incompletion instead of a sack.
That was huge because that would have been a big sack, almost a fumble, and he somehow managed to get that ball forward and be an incomplete pass. He made some big runs. I'll quickly mention kind of how gritty this game was. How about that amazing goal stand defense the Texans had? And then on 4th and goal, Tannehill had that fake run for a touchdown.
Yeah. Yep.
Like that was just great on both sides, right? There was great defense, and then the Titans still got in at 4th down. So yeah, all around a solid game. Even though the Texans had a good lead, it got close. It was 14-all. I do want to speak about a few things. That pick in the Texans end zone was really good. It frustrated me. I watched it over and over again because it was just a bad play call. Watson kind of jumped up a little bit to get a little bit more height, and he still got blocked. He was throwing it to Fuller. Well, Fuller was deep in the end zone. He was running, basically just to the center of the end zone, and there was 2 guys covered ahead of him. So you don't have enough room, and just the math of the height, to be able to throw it to Fuller when you have 2 guys in front of your wide receiver in the end zone, and there were still more guys in the middle who ended up blocking the pass. So that was just a bad play call to go for that touchdown to Fuller when you have basically 2 or 3 guys in the passing window, and one of them blocked it. And then a couple more specific plays. Let's see here. Oh, here's a big one. This one bothered me. It was early in the 4th quarter. The Titans are driving. I think it was 2nd and 10. And there was that unnecessary roughness from the linebacker. Did you see that big hit?
Yes.
All right. So I replayed that. I fortunately did not have time to go back and watch the full version to see.
I thought it was bogus.
Yeah, no, same here. I was going to say it was bogus. It was bad. Just watching it fast time was enough bogus. I did not see the replay, so I don't know if there was helmets, but they didn't call that. They said roughness. So here's the comments. The guy, number 14, Eric Weens for the Titans, caught the ball. He was running, he's running basically parallel or lateral, and he catches the ball. His momentum is actually going backwards towards the line of scrimmage, but he turns his body. I guess his body was turning forward, but he was turning, but his body was still going backwards. We had a little, and we know that, if you're going towards each other, hits can look more vicious. So he turns. Well, number 57, Brennan Scarlett for the Texans, already had a running start, and he blows him up. It wasn't helmet to helmet. He didn't drive him to the ground. He didn't pick him up.
It wasn't even shoulder to helmet.
Yeah, no, it was a terrible call. But here's what just frustrates me. They should have known. One guy has momentum, the linebacker. He is 6'4", 263 pounds. Another guy who has very little momentum is 5'9", 195. Who do you think is going to win that battle? I don't know. Maybe the guy that blew up the small wide receiver. But yeah, terrible call. The replay says it's bad. The physics says it's bad. And that actually, I think, gave the Titans didn't that give him a field goal? I think that helped him get him a field goal.
I think there was at least some score that came from that. But the thing of though is that I have seen it before where the ref will call a foul or a flag, will throw a flag just based on the extremeness of the hit rather than necessarily whether it was a violation of the rule. And that was a case where it just felt clearly like, oh, he popped the guy, it was loud, he went on the ground, one guy clearly won, and it was the defender, so therefore that was illegal, right?
Yeah.
And granted, to be fair, the shoulder, I think, was relatively nearby the head. It was like shoulder to shoulder kind of contact. So it was, in a bang-bang situation, it's not wildly wrong, but it was wrong. But
he's also like 7 inches taller than the guy.
Right. And I just think, stuff like that, I've said for years now, ever since 2013, ever since the Niners game in Seattle in the conference championship game, I've said that any foul that results in a 15-yard change in the field has to be automatically reviewed. It just does. Stuff like that affects games. This was a game for the division. It did give the Titans a temporary advantage. Now, granted, the Titans. Granted, the Texans ended up winning, but it could have gone the other way, right? It always could go the other way in games that are this close. There was also a bogus face mask call, where the guy grabbed the shoulder. He had like a finger that sort of brushed the face mask, but he never grabbed onto it, and then grabbed the shoulder and pulled him down, and they called it a face mask. And that gave the Texans a 15-yard penalty. So those, I get, nothing in football is ever 1-for-1 because of situational dynamics. But as far as bad calls, I think each team got one in that game. Yeah, dude. I one more comment about Tannehill. He was accurate, but he was also. You were talking about the ball where he threw when he was going to the ground. He just displayed a very, I hate this word, but I'm going to use it anyway, a very elite level of awareness. He was very aware of what was happening in the pocket. He didn't see ghosts. He had several, not just one, but several really good throwaways that kept him from getting sacked. The one you talked about was the most exciting of them, but he had some other very well calculated moments like that. And I just wonder, like, where was that on the Dolphins? And I think maybe the Titans' O-line is better. Maybe he just has more confidence because he has better protection.
Maybe him getting cut. Maybe him getting, or basically kind of sent away, kind of lit a fire.
Yeah, and he has a fresh start there, right? And he's on a better team now and has an opportunity to lift the team up into something meaningful. And I think maybe that kind of motivation got to him. So I'm really happy for him because I always felt like he was a good quarterback playing inside of a mediocre quarterback's body in Miami, if that makes sense. Like he was just not, he was never playing to his potential there. So it's exciting to see him have a breakout season with the Titans.
Last comment before I move on. Guess the Texans don't listen to our show because Watson was still running for his life in this game.
Yes, he was.
All right, let's move on.
All right, so our Week 16 game was Bengals at Dolphins, who at the time it was the 1-11 Bengals, 1-11-1 Bengals.
No, 1-13.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so you're right. Yeah, sorry. 1-13 versus
3-11.
The 3-11 Dolphins.
Yes.
So
let me take charge of this one.
Why don't you take charge of this one? Because I have a few thoughts that are more funny than anything else. So you'll probably say some things that are serious since you care.
So I want to wait. Since I picked them, I didn't pick them.
No, I said since you care.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, actually, no. I think I did pick them, but yeah, I do care. So I love how the two highest scoring games this week, and the only two games that went to overtime, and two exciting games with big numbers, were at the moment of the game, the 3-11 Giants playing the 3-11 Redskins, resulting in 76 points, 8 touchdowns, no picks. And then the Dolphins, Bengals, resulting in 73 points, over 800 passing yards, 8 touchdowns, and 1 pick. So and they both went to overtime. So I just kind of love that. Yeah. So the Dolphins were just trying to be ferocious. Like they were trying to win. They're clearly not tanking. The Bengals probably figure at this point they're going to have the worst record anyway. So why not try to play well? Maybe Dalton wants to keep his job, though, which is good. I hope if Dalton earns a position, I'm okay with that because then we can draft the quarterback I want. If not, they're going to draft Joe Burrow. But that's another story. So Dolphins played hard. Fitzpatrick, to me, these were like Dan Marino games. Listen to these stats. Dalton, 33 of 56, 396, 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Ryan Fitzpatrick, 31 of 52, 419 yards, 4 touchdowns, 1 pick. Basically, low on efficiency, completion percentage, average, yards per completion, but a ton of attempts and a lot of yards and good touchdowns. So it was exciting. The Dolphins did control this game. They dominated the first 3 quarters. They should have won by more. It was.
I agree.
This game would have been very stressful to watch live. I'd already seen the score afterwards. I was like, oh, the Dolphins won. So I'm glad I didn't watch it live because it would have given me a heart attack to see how I have the stats here. So we were up 35-12 with 11-12 left in the game. We were up 35-19 with 6:11 in the game. We get the ball back. We have the ball with 4:23 left. And these are minor things, but still important. We snapped the ball with 10 seconds remaining. You want to take off as much clock as possible. And then on that same play, we got out of bounds. We didn't stay in bounds to kill the clock because they only had 1 or 0 timeouts left. Our clock management was pretty poor at the end. And the decision that really frustrated me at the end was why they went for the 47-yard field goal. I know they wanted to go by 2 scores, but there's 3:07 left. And the Bengals had no timeouts. We ended up missing the field goal, giving them good field goal percentage, and they drove down and scored. We should have punted and forced them to be near their end zone and drive the whole distance. So just bad play clock, time management decisions at the end made this game closer than it should have been because the Dolphins really were beating them bad the first 3.5 quarters. But proud of the team. It was fun to watch. Some Devontae Parker made some big catches. He's kind of playing up more to the hype in his draft. He was drafted pretty high. He now passed, I think, 1,000 receiving yards, which may actually be his first. Let me check really quick, 3 seconds. Yeah, this is his first 1,000 receiving yard season. 9 touchdowns, which is better than 4 he had in 2016. So he was drafted in the first round. So that's good to see. What else? Some exciting plays, and glad we won in overtime. So I'll hand it over to you.
So, yeah, I agree with everything you said. At the point where I stopped I knew it was an overtime game, but before I started watching the replay. But when I got to halftime, I was like, what's going to happen in this game? Because it just felt like Miami was totally in charge. And then, it slipped away until the end. It never should have gone to overtime. I agree, but it made for an interesting watch. I heard the name Greg Mabin, which means that if one of your starting cornerbacks is Greg Mabin, your defense is in trouble. Your roster is bad, so you need to fix it, Bengals. And that's why you guys have locked up the first overall pick for next year.
Yep, Greg Mabin right here, Bengals.
Yep, he was a 49er in the doldrums of the mid-2010s. So the Dolphins are sitting right now at the 5th overall pick. That could change depending on next week, actually, several spots, but that's where they sit as of right now. So I don't know what you guys want to do. I feel like this was an interesting game in looking at the meta because the Dolphins are a team that seem to have a plan, at least somewhat. Like they traded away several of their players. They hoarded a bunch of draft picks, and then they have a coach that plays them hard, right? They went out there, they won 4 games this year. The outside chance they could beat the Patriots next week. I don't think they will, but a 4-12 record for a team that is pretty much stripped of all of its top blue chip talent. Which, keep in mind, like the Niners were 4-12 last year, and I thought they were a much better team than that. But they had their quarterback on ACL. They had several guys injured. It was a year where they were still trying to build up pieces. The Dolphins seem to be a team that stripped away so that they could buy all this cap space. They got the draft picks. They showed that they, I think, have decent coaching. So now they can, starting next year, I think is a year where they can start bringing in some good pieces to start building on. The Bengals seem to me a team that As an analogy, the Dolphins are now leaving the station. They're a very heavyweight train that's starting to speed up a little bit, whereas the Bengals are
Just crashed and don't know
just
what to do.
crashed this year, and
And don't know how to rebuild.
it's the train is still burning, and they're still putting out the fires, and they haven't even started the repairs yet. That's where the Bengals are at this year. So
And they don't even know, to stay with that analogy, they don't know which cars in the train to save and what to salvage and where to start.
right.
Because they
Which
don't
to
know.
spend money on to fix
Yeah.
versus ones that they just want to jettison and move on from. So, yeah, it's a weird difference. Even though I would say both teams are really bad this year, one team has hope and the other team does not. I would not want to be a Bengals fan, whereas being a Dolphins fan feels more like being a Niners fan 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And that there was a lot of hope associated with that place. So I just hope that you guys are able to hit on your picks and become a force in the AFC East again. All right, so let's move.
Really quick.
Yep,
When I have one more thing.
go for it.
Another, some bad calls in this game. So I think it was in my notes here. It was Gasecki, second quarter, 6:55 left. The Dolphins are near their end zone. It was third down. Throws a pass to Gasecki. He had a guy all over him. Like the Bengals defender was basically giving Gasecki a hug, and his back was turned to the ball, and they didn't call it. And I watched the replay, and I don't think there were refs that were nearby, but there should have been a ref there. How was there not a ref on the right-hand sideline, like running with the receivers to see that?
Yeah,
Because it was clearly a pass interference. Next one, in the third quarter, the Bengals, three guys basically hit Fitzpatrick almost all at once, and they called it roughing the passer. Now, yes, I'm a Dolphins fan. I'd like to think I'm also pretty objective. That was a terrible call. It was not roughing the passer. Yeah, he got hit by 2 or 3 guys, but it was bang, bang. It wasn't helmet to helmet. And one of the guys who went down to the ground with him turned his body a little bit and did not land on him. It was not roughing the passer, and they should not have called it. And even though it helped my team out, I was disappointed in seeing that call. It shouldn't have happened.
fair
So,
enough. I
they
won't
need to
argue
get
with you.
Yeah, they need to have better play calling, guys. Come on, refs, figure this out.
Yep.
Let's go on.
Yep. I think they need a couple extra guys too on the field.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on to our
the-
next segment, our highlight
Well,
segment. This
on
is
the-
not a traditional highlights segment per se. We're going to be talking about the Pro Bowl rosters that came out. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? I don't remember now. It's all a blur. But we'll also be talking about the MVP situation. So let's actually go ahead and dive into the MVP first, since I personally think this is a much simpler discussion. So as of right now, no matter what happens next week, I don't see anyone bumping off Lamar Jackson. Do you agree with that?
Yes. Sorry, I really wanted to interject there because we should give an update on the Packers-Vikings.
Yes, I agree. Thank you. So Packers are up 23-10 over the Vikings with 5:21 left in the fourth. I think there was a deep pass to Devonta Adams that gave the Packers their 23 points. And the Vikings have the ball at their 41. Yeah, this one's looking not great for the Vikings, but looks like they're starting to move down the field. So if they can get a quick score here, they've got a chance. The Packers did miss their extra point, so 2 touchdowns would give the Vikings the lead. So we'll see what happens. I'll keep you guys updated on that.
Back to the MVP.
Yeah, back to the MVP. So Lamar Jackson right now, just statistically, he has 4,300 all-purpose yards, 43 all-purpose touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Now he also has 8 fumbles, but
How many of those did he lose?
I don't know. I don't know.
That should be considered.
He's lost 2 fumbles,
Okay.
which is lucky. That's very lucky, in my opinion, for an offense to recover 6 of 8 fumbles from your quarterback.
Yeah.
That's pretty lucky. So, but anyway, regardless, I just don't see, even without the 7 rushing touchdowns that he has, he still leads the league in touchdowns. So, in passing touchdowns. So, I just don't see an argument for anybody else at this point.
I think okay, so I'm gonna agree. But I don't think Russell Wilson is getting enough love. I can't believe I just said that, but that is true. I think people are overly um, hyped about the rushing yards Lamar has. And that's great. He's going to end up with probably about, if he plays next week, he'll end up with what, 45, 4,600 all purpose yards? That's great. But until someone can give, well, a few things. One, this is not the greatest season of all time. This is not even a top 10, and it's not a top 20. And until I really dig into the stats and the math and everything, it's probably not even a top 30 quarterback season of all time. Everyone, you just need to stop. This is great. But you know what? How many times have we said that refs and players should learn math and physics? Every analyst should learn logic because they say some of the dumbest things. And a lot of what they say is what we call a non sequitur. When you make an argument, a conclusion based on premises that are false. So, has Lamar Jackson been a great running quarterback? Yes. Better than Michael Vick. That does not mean, therefore, this is the greatest quarterback season of all time. That's not how that works, guys. Could have had 3,500 rushing yards, and that wouldn't make him a great quarterback. That would make him, well, a running back, and that'd be great, but not a quarterback, nor the best of all time for a quarterback. So he's the MVP. He deserves it. He should get it. He will get it. But it's not, and it is awesome season, not top 10, not absolutely mind-blowing with everything combined, and Russell Wilson's not getting enough love. So I would say all those things are true. Put it all together, he's going to win. I'm done.
Now, yeah, I think I agree with you. The logic thing, 100%. I think the reason why he has to be a lock at this point is that even though Jackson's probably resting next week, I think you have to factor that in, first of all. Wilson's going to be playing out of his mind because they want to get a top seed. They're playing the SF for a bye next week. But you combine the stats, total yards when you combine rushing passing is similar between the two. Touchdowns, Wilson has 32 touchdowns and Jackson has 43. So
that's fair.
That's a pretty big delta. And then the only thing I'd say that you might want to argue in Wilson's favor is that he's had like twice the sacks. So he has a much worse O-line, and I think he has an overall worse offensive roster to utilize than Jackson does. So I think that balances out a little bit, but I think overall you still got to give it to Jackson just because of his overall statistics and what he's been able to turn that team into.
Well, true, but here's one thing and we're talking about MVP, and this actually ties into Pro Bowl, so we can switch after this if we want. Remember, we said before, depending on how people want to define most valuable, with yours and our like mine and yours, with our definition, our usage, Jackson can get it, and it's not an issue with how good the Ravens team is. Here's what drives me nuts. Is how the media is going crazy over Jackson and are complete hypocrites with their usage and definition of most valuable player because they're not considering the fact that the Seahawks have two Pro Bowlers, Russell Wilson and Bobby Wagner, they're starting, and the Ravens have 12 by their own. One, I think it's just a bad definition, but even if it's a good definition, they're inconsistent because how can he's on the best team, but then they got good running and a way better defense and also good offense. How do you have 12 Pro Bowlers, which is insane, even if that's even valid, if they should or not? But even if it is valid, does that not take away from the value perspective for how they define it? And I don't really hear that.
So. Right, and I think that we would almost be better served instead of saying most valuable player, we should say, even though this technically what I'm about to say means the same thing, is to say highest absolute value player, because the most valuable player is someone that has the highest value, not the
relative value.
Like relative value to something else, like to something within their own team, right?
Which is sadly what every sport and every analyst for all the major sports thinks it is, and it drives me insane.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if it was if it was value relative to like some sort, if you took like a player's average or a player's value and then compared it to like their team's average value and did a delta, if that was even possible, Russell Wilson would have a way higher number than Jackson.
He'd also probably have like 3 MVPs already in his career.
Right, right. He's put a lot on his shoulders, but that doesn't make you MVP. Just like having 12 Pro Bowlers and a really good team doesn't make you MVP for Jackson, right? I'm just looking at his stats and saying you just can't really make an argument for Wilson based on that specifically, but you have to look at his value as a player independent of the pieces around him. And even though that's probably an impossible task to do, we can at least approach it enough to know that then in my opinion Jackson is still slightly ahead. But I would agree with you, he's not miles ahead like the media is making him sound.
Yeah, no, he's ahead, and he'll get it, and he should get it. And you're right, he's going to get it independent of the Pro Bowl thing, but the media is inconsistent with how they use it and have the Pro Bowl thing. So.
Right. All right, so let's dive into the Pro Bowl roster. So Pro Bowl roster came out, and it's interesting. I'm going to go ahead and just read some of the highlights. I'm not going to read through every player in both conference. That's too much. But I do want to read some of the players. And from my perspective, I'm not knowledgeable enough yet. I want to become this soon over the next couple of years. But right now, I'm not knowledgeable enough about league-wide every single player to know exactly who got snubbed, who didn't, who should be there, who shouldn't. I'm just going to give thoughts on Niners that I felt like maybe should have made it and not try to talk about other teams. So for the AFC Pro Bowl roster, we've got on offense, we've got a lot of receivers that you'd expect to be there. DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek Hill made it, which was a little surprising. Jarvis Landry for the Browns is also a little bit surprising, I think. Keenan Allen's always been a solid piece, so not a huge surprise there. Tackles, a bunch of guys. I can't compare offensive tackles, guards, centers. Some names I recognize there. And then Laramie Tunsil, I guess for your interest, because he was traded from the Dolphins to the Texans. Tight ends, Travis Kelce, not a surprise. Although I don't think he's had nearly as good of a year as he had last year. So maybe just decent. Relatively to other players, he's had a good year. But and then quarterback, Lamar Jackson, obviously, Patrick Mahomes, Deshaun Watson. Did anybody get snubbed there?
No, and actually take it back. So Kelce's actually he's
is he tearing it up? And I lied.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it a lie. Just call it misinformation. 94 receptions, 1,200 yards. So with one more game, he'll have similar stats to last year. He'll be lower on touchdowns, but he'll have similar receptions and yards to last year. So not as great, but this would be like his second best year of all time, his career.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. No, you're right. That's deserving for sure. Looks a lot like Kittle's year last year, lower on the touchdowns, really high on yards. Yeah. Okay. Yep. No, that's fair. Running backs, Nick Chubb has had a great year. Derrick Henry for the Titans has had a great year. Mark Ingram for the Ravens had an exceptional year, so not surprised there. And then fullback Patrick Ricard for the Ravens. Don't know much about him, to be honest. Defensive end, so we're now on defense. Joey Bosa, Frank Clark, Calais Campbell.
Those all sound good.
Those sound reasonable. Interior lineman, Cameron Hayward for the Steelers, Chris Jones for the Chiefs, Geno Atkins for the Bengals. Outside linebacker, Von Miller, TJ Watt for the Steelers, and Matt Judon for the Ravens.
I like Von Miller.
I think he's a little...
I think he got a little bit of, I don't know, it's not nepotism. What's the...
Like he's there because of name recognition?
Yeah,
like because of respect for what he's done in the past?
Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer, and he's been in there like 7 times already, so he kind of got...
Yeah. I think a similar thing happened with Richard Sherman, but we'll get to that in a minute. So
And Geno Atkins.
yeah, Geno Atkins was good. Um, yeah, and then inside linebacker, so Darius Leonard for the Colts, not a surprise at all, and then Donta Hightower for the Patriots. Cornerback, Stephon Gilmore is tied for the league lead in interceptions. He's had a great year. Tre'Davious White for the Bills also had a good year. He's a rookie. Marcus Peters and Marlon Humphrey, both for the Ravens. And then free safety, Minkah Fitzpatrick. Whew,
Dude, he might get Defensive Player of the Year. He's been insane since he got on the Steelers.
Yeah, he's had a really great season. And then Earl Thomas. I would need to check into Thomas a little bit. I don't know about that one.
Might be a Von Miller thing.
To be honest, yeah, there might be a little bit of Von Miller syndrome there.
And Leonard he deserved it, but he got snubbed last year. Remember, as a rookie. I think he was the Darius Leonard, the linebacker for the Colts, and he was a rookie last year, and he got huge snubbed. So I'm glad they got him.
Yeah, he's been nothing other than a tackle machine since he got drafted. Jamal Adams for strong safety for the Jets. He's phenomenal. He's a phenomenal player. So that was deserving. Special teams, Justin Tucker for the Ravens, long snapper Morgan Cox for the Ravens, punter Brett Kern for the Titans, and then return specialist Mecole Hardman for the Chiefs. I've seen that guy. He's crazy good. Special teamer Matthew Slater for the Patriots. All right. So
just to let you guys know, as long snapper, I know I'm third string. I tried.
You're the fourth string. Yeah.
I tried.
Or you said, wait. I'm sorry.
No, I'm third string. You're fourth.
You're the backup, man. No team has a third string long snapper.
That's right. So guys, I tried. Morgan, he's on the Ravens. He's really good. Maybe next year I can make it. I don't know if a backup long snapper could be an alternate, but I will try better for you guys next year.
Do you have his cell number? Can you taunt him over text messages maybe so you can make it next year?
Well, see, honestly, the thing about long snapping is because of the rules, like you can't go for the long snapper. You don't even I'm not a small guy, but I'm not a huge guy. So if I could just learn how to long snap, you can't tackle the long snapper. So if you know how to do it, then it's like a skill you could learn without having to be super athletic.
True.
So who knows? Maybe now may have the motivation to do long snapping.
All right, NFC Pro Bowl roster, offense, wide receiver, Julio Jones, monster season. Michael Thomas, even more monster season. He broke the record for most receptions in a year this year. Awesome. Mike Evans for the Bucks, which I think is fine, and then Chris Godwin for the Bucks. Jameis Winston has the most passing yards this year, so I'm not surprised.
He also has like 25 picks.
Yeah, I know, but that's not Chris Godwin's and Mike Evans' fault per se.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, you're referring to the receiver. Yeah,
right. Tackle David Bakhtiari for the Packers, Tyron Smith for the Cowboys, Terron Armstead. Guards Zach Martin, Brandon Brooks, Brandon Scherf. I don't know who Brandon Scherf is. Center Jason Kelsey, Travis Friedrich. So several Cowboys in there. So Dak Prescott, Well, we've said good things about you, but when you've got like the best O-line in the league, you gotta be good. So, tight end George Kittle, yes. Zach Ertz, not a surprise. Quarterback Russell Wilson, deserved. Drew Brees, deserved. Aaron Rodgers, I think deserved. I'm bummed because I think Matthew Stafford would have made it if he had been healthy this year because he was off to a great start, but.
I have a quarterback snub talk we'll get to at the end after this. So
for the NFC?
Yes. Or you want to do it now?
Why don't you just do it now since we're looking at quarterbacks?
Yeah. So I think Kirk Cousins.
Oh yeah, I think he might deserve. Does he deserve to be on there more than?
So here's the thing: Brees and Rodgers. Here's the thing: his yards, his touchdowns are right there with Rodgers. Rodgers only has 2 picks. But Cousins only has 5. Brees has 4. So they're all right there with touchdowns and close enough with picks. But Cousins is 7% higher efficient than Rodgers at 70 and Rodgers at 63. But Brees is at 75. But Brees has way less yards. And they've all won big games. And so they're all really close. But I think the debate should be between Brees and Rodgers for the third quarterback. and Cousins should have been the second quarterback. So it's. I think there was a little name recognition, right? Breeze and Rodgers, they probably have like 15 Pro Bowls combined or something or more. Actually, it's probably more like 20, but still, I think Cousins should have been second, and then Rodgers and Breeze should have been the debate for third. So it's not egregious, but it's, I think, enough, and I think it's just enough to be a snub.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And I think, though, Kirk Cousins has a stigma about him that I think he will need to overcome if he wants to get that kind of recognition. And the stigma is not that I necessarily think this is meant he shouldn't have gotten in this year, but that he can't beat teams with winning records.
Now, to this year, though, that did happen. Like this year, he has played in some big games, made some big throws for some good wins. Sadly, they're going to lose here to the Packers, and they're at home, so that's going to hurt this case. But even with the 10-5 records up to this point, like he's played well and in some big games. But you're right, the stigma has carried over from the past failures of losing big games.
Right. Okay. So moving on from quarterback to running back, Dalvin Cook has had a great year. Christian McCaffrey, no question. And then Ezekiel Elliott has had a great year too. Fullback Kyle Juszczyk for the Niners. Not a huge competition. There's not a whole lot of fullbacks in the league, but he's been awesome. Defensive end, Cameron Jordan for the Saints, Nick Bosa for the Niners, and Danielle Hunter for the Vikings. I don't think I necessarily agree with all of that, but I'll leave it there. One thing that's a little weird about this is that they don't, the way that they handle linebackers that line up as defensive ends is a little weird.
And tackles, defensive ends, and like 3-4 linebackers. And like it's not a consistent amount of like who makes it between all those groups each year. It's changed over the years. It's
right. So interior lineman Aaron Donald, fine. Fletcher Cox, fine. Grady Jarrett, okay. Outside linebacker Chandler Jones, Khalil Mack, Shaquille Barrett. Shaquille Barrett's having a monster year. Khalil Mack is having a bit of a down year. And then inside linebacker Bobby Wagner, Luke Kuechly. Bobby Wagner I don't think deserved this one. He's a good player, but I don't think he deserved to make it. I think Fred Warner from the Niners had a better year than him, and I don't even necessarily think Warner should have made it. So
or Eric Kendricks for the Vikings put up a solid year.
Yeah, he had a good year too. Yep.
So I think he's a semi snub as well between one of these guys.
Yeah. Cornerback, we got Marshawn Lattimore for the Saints, Richard Sherman for the Niners, Darius Slay for the Lions, and Jalen Ramsey for the Rams. I think Richard Sherman got a little bit of a name recognition boost on this one. He did have 3 picks this year, and he's been okay, but I don't know. I'm sure you could find
Ramsey,
another corner that did it better.
Ramsey, I mean, he has 2 forced, and he has like 1 or 2 pat downs, I think 1 interception, 2 forced fumbles, and like 40-ish tackles. Seems a little low. You know, maybe we'll have to watch the context. We have to watch the context of his whole games. But Ramsey probably got a little bit of recognition or hype, but I don't have enough information to say it was a bad call.
Yeah, I think so. One guy, another Niner, who I think maybe should have made it this year was K'Wan Williams. He's had 2 interceptions, 4. It says 3 here on ESPN, but I'm pretty sure it's 4 forced fumbles. And he's had only 2 passes defended, but he's had 4 stuffs. So he's been an all-around, like, good in the run game, also good in the short pass game. So I think he might have had a better year than Ramsey did. So again, a case where name recognition kind of bumped you in there. So it's, again, I don't like the politics. Free safety, Budda Baker, monster season, and Eddie Jackson for the Bears. Strong safety, Harrison Smith for the Vikings, and then special teams, Will Lutz for the Saints, Rick Lovato for the Eagles, Tress Way for the Redskins, return specialist Deontay Harris for the Saints. Deontay Harris has been good. Special teamer Cordarrelle Patterson for the Bears. So, yeah, and then just going over real quick, the teams that had the most players, the Ravens from the AFC had 12, and then the next team was the Chiefs with 6, and the Steelers had 5. And then in the NFC, the Saints had 7, and the Eagles had 5, and then the Cowboys and the Niners had 4.
And I don't think the Dolphins sent anyone, which makes sense. But I don't think we had.
Yeah, no, the Dolphins didn't send anyone this year.
It's not like baseball where every team sends someone.
Does every
That's
team?
fine.
Wait, is that right? I'm going
And
blank.
baseball, I think it's a rule. I think in baseball, one of the rules they've made is for the All Star game that every team has a representative.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah.
Is that a new rule, or has that always been that way?
I've known it for at least we'll say 3 to 6 years.
Okay.
So I could be longer, but I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. So that wraps up our Pro Bowl segment. A game that I'm pretty sure Joseph and I will not be watching. But anyway, it's really more about the recognition, and for the Niners, seeing 4 guys on there when I maybe think even 1 or 2 more deserved it is pretty awesome. Not like 2011 though, when Jim Harbaugh came on the scene and they had 9 Pro Bowlers, so not quite that good. Okay, so moving on to our segment number 3, the quick cap. So real quick, just going to talk about the 2 Niner games that happened 2 weeks ago. The Falcons at Niners. Falcons pulled off a win. The Niners just they came off that game against the Saints where they won 48-46 in that incredible shootout against Drew Brees. Going into this game, the Niners secondary was missing 60% of its starters. The O played really flat. I felt like they didn't have an answer for Julio Jones. The guys that normally would cover him weren't in the game. So, credit to the Falcons for coming on the road and winning when they've had a tough year. But, I think all along people have sort of underrated Ryan and Jones this year just because the Falcons have had a bad record. But they're always a threat no matter where they go. I think it's really their defense that's pulled them down. But they played the Niners hard. And it just looked like the Niners were kind of tired coming off that game. So the sad thing about this game was not just intrinsically the loss. It was that if the Niners had won that game, the Seattle loss to Arizona would have sealed the Niners being the first seed, so they could have rested players next week, which is huge for us since we have so many guys that are hurting right now. But now we have to play in Seattle for that first seed next week, and we haven't won in Seattle since 2011.
Ooh, wow,
So,
really?
Yes. So I think we're like
Including
0
playoffs?
and 10 or something in Seattle. So it's been rough, and we're going to need to turn it around next week.
That include playoffs?
That includes playoff. We've had 1 playoff game there, and then I think it's 0 and 9, and then 8 regular season games there. Rams at Niners this on Saturday night. 49ers win with a last-second field goal, 34-31. For most of the day, Jimmy looked pretty flat as well, but then he was really clutch. He was sort of a Russell Wilson that game. He rose to the occasion when it mattered the most. He converted 2 3rd and 16s late in that game to win. And so it's exciting to see that he can be clutch. I'd rather have a team that doesn't play hot all game, like it plays hot all game, or doesn't play hot all game and then is clutch at the end to win, than a team that plays hot and then falls apart at the end. Even though I know we rag on Russell Wilson all the time for being that kind of player, it's still better to be that kind of player. You look at the success the Seattle Seahawks have had over the last 8 years. That's one of the reasons why. So that was a game that they needed to win, and they won. And so now we got our final game of the year up in Seattle, and that's going to determine some really important seeding. We already talked about Bengals at Dolphins. Did you have any thoughts on the Dolphins at Giants game?
Not much. I mean, I'm not surprised we lost, but I'm a little disappointed because, it's not like Daniel Jones put up a big game. Fitzpatrick played okay. Both run games were decent, but we crumbled in the 3rd and 4th quarter. I think we were outscored 31-10 in the second half or something like that. So no, 28-10, something like that. It was bad. Like we were up pretty. I think it was bad in the 3rd and 4th quarter. And it's not like the Giants played amazing relative to us. So that's all right. We're 4 games. We'll see what we can do next week, and what draft pick we'll have. We'll have plenty of that conversation, post regular season. But it's been nice this year where I knew we were going to be really bad, and it's been okay to not watch all the games like even including just highlights or condensed version, I haven't even looked at the highlights for probably half of the games this season, and that's okay. So, um, but it was fun to watch the Bengals game.
Yeah, that's a good place to be in emotionally, I think, when your team's bad. Like you don't feel like you have to ride on every emotion in every game, or it's just a heart attack central.
But if they don't win a playoff game in the next 3 years, that's a different story. Because with all these picks and this, finally doing all that, that'll be frustrating if they don't do something with all this next few years.
Yeah, without getting into it too much, I think they need 2 years to build enough pieces, and then I think in the third year, granted that they have good direction the whole time, I think in the third year, so 2022, they could be a playoff contender. I think
And
that's the rate that they're going at.
Yeah, and Brady will definitely be gone by then. So
yes. All right. So our commentators say the darndest things. Joseph has our one quote for the week.
Yeah. So Christian Wilkins, right, the defensive tackle that we drafted from Clemson, number 13th pick of this year. One of the picks I was excited about. He scored a touchdown. Nice little bit. Now he caught it, and then he fumbled it like right before he passed the plane into the end zone, and then he recovered it in the end zone. They called it a touchdown. It was really exciting to see. And the announcer says, after he catches it, and it's a big man touchdown in Miami. So that was
okay.
It.
So I'm glad you read it first, because there's a longer quote from that that I'm going to read off. So he says, I don't remember the name of the announcer. I've heard him before, but he said, we look at a big man, 6 feet, 4 inches, 315 pounds, but that's a 6-year-old kid out there catching a touchdown from Ryan Fitzpatrick. Just like one of his kids was doing it in pregame warm-up, he gets another one of his kids to catch a touchdown right there.
Oh, man.
How old's Ryan Fitzpatrick? Is he like 37, 38?
Oh, yeah, he's definitely in their late 30s.
Yeah, these are like his kids. It's kind of crazy to think about that. All right. Segment number 5, our final segment of the evening, is going to be our predictions for Week 17. I have some bad news for everyone, and that is that I have had a awful last 3 weeks. I've been 26-22 in the last 3 weeks, and Joseph has been 36-12. So he's picked up 10 games on me, which is a crazy turnaround for 3 weeks. And factor into that the fact that I was 5 games ahead of him in the last episode, and now I'm 5 games behind him going into the last week of the regular season. So my only hope is that Joseph sticks his head in the toilet, doesn't know which teams are actually playing in the playoffs, and then just randomly clicks on ESPN Pigskin Pick'em, and then I somehow make up 5 games during the playoffs.
Win them. Not only do I have to pick random games, but you still have to win the ones that we're different on.
Correct. So yeah, it's going to be a tough journey, but I'm committed to winning, just like Russell Wilson. So
hey, all he does is win.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. All he does is win. So a little bit of a preface for our predictions this week. Normally we commit whatever we say on this show, we've already made our picks online. We commit to that for the coming week. This week, though, is an exception to that. And the reason for that is because several teams may not play their starters this week because they don't need to. So what we're saying is that for the games where they're either irrelevant or a team is already has not locked up a seed yet, we are going to keep those picks. But if there's a game where teams have not or have locked their picks and we just don't know who they're going to start yet, we are subjecting those to potentially change on the fly before next week. But we'll update you. We'll have a show next week. We'll update you on what those picks were. And there's, I think, maybe 3, possibly 4 games that are going to be like that. So we'll say what they are as we go down the list here. But just as a warning for you guys, so that you don't think we're just like randomly changing picks during the week. So starting off, I'll start first, and then we'll alternate. So starting off, Falcons at Bucks. This game is irrelevant, so every team's going to be playing. I'm picking Bucks.
I'm going Falcons.
Okay.
This is a pick 'em.
This is a tough one.
Yeah. So we have Jets at Bills. So this is a game that is subject to change. I'm going Bills.
I'm going Bills as well, and I think even if they rest, I'm probably still going to go Bills.
Okay.
Bears at Vikings. I'm going Vikings.
Same. Browns at Bengals. I'm going Bengals. Browns have been kind of inconsistent, and they've had some bad locker room experiences several weeks, and I think the Bengals put up some fight today, and they have no reason not to play, right? They're going to get the number 1 seed regardless of what happens. They're guaranteed to have the worst record. I think they're going to put on some fight for the home fields and a lot of victory in a division game.
And it is a division game. Yeah, I think Baker Mayfield's just been too busy doing toilet commercials this season. So I'm going Bengals as well on this one.
Oh, nice. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Packers at Lions. I'm going Packers.
Same. Chargers at Chiefs. Chiefs.
Same.
Also,
yep.
The Chiefs are silently 11-4 and can still get the 2 seed if the Patriots lose.
Silent but deadly.
Yeah. Speaking of Patriots, go ahead.
Yes. So Dolphins at Patriots. I'm going Patriots.
Same.
The Patriots are going to be playing for a seed next week. So Saints.
Saints at Panthers. Going Saints.
Same here. Redskins at Cowboys. I'm going Cowboys. Cowboys are playing for their lives.
Yeah, same. Raiders at Broncos. Tough one. I thought about going Broncos, but I'm going Raiders.
All right. Interesting. I'm going Broncos, so I'll put a star next to that one. Titans at Texans. I'm going Texans.
Same. Colts at Jaguars. Thought about giving the Jaguars the edge, but the Colts beat up on whoever they played last week. I forgot who, and I think the Colts will take it.
Same here. Cardinals at Rams. I'm going Rams. I think this is a pride game for the Rams. So
yeah,
I'm going Rams on this one.
Eagles at Giants. Eagles are going to try to take the division. They're going to win this game.
Same here. Steelers at Ravens. I'm going Ravens tentatively. If they rest everybody, I may change that.
Yeah, exact same thing. That's
especially since the Steelers are playing for a playoff spot.
Exactly. If the Steelers win, the thing is, the Steelers win and the Titans win, the Titans still have the tie break. So, but if the Titans lose,
which is a reasonable possibility that the Titans would lose.
Yeah, so the Steelers have to win. So I'm doing the same thing you are with the subject, the commission out.
Yep. Okay, and then Niners at Seahawks. I'm going brave. I picked Baltimore when it was Niners at Baltimore. I'm going Niners this week. Seahawks are hurting.
Yeah,
they lost 2 running backs this week and a guard, I think, or a tackle. So I'm going Niners.
Yeah, same here. And what I saw out of that Rams game was just Jimmy G was clutch. He was also pretty assertive and determined. And, when Kittle gets the ball, he reminds me of like Gronk from like 2011 to 2014. He's not as dominant per se, but he's great after the catch. And the Niners they have all the pieces. I know they have some injuries, but I think the Niners will do what they have to win. And I imagine Russell Wilson will play great, but I think the Niners will just edge them out, just like the Seahawks just edged out the Niners a few months ago.
Yep, same here. All right, so we only differed on Falcons at Bucks and Raiders at Broncos, so not bad. I was expecting us to differ on more just because it's such a random week, but
yeah.
All right, so at most I can make up 2 games this weekend.
I can have an early
which is not good. That's not good.
Yeah. Well, good job,
best case scenario. Fun. So next week we will be on for our post week 17 pre-playoff wild card week show. And then Joseph and another friend of ours is actually going to be visiting soon. We're hopefully going to be watching, assuming the Niners make it this far, we're going to be watching the division week together, which will be awesome. We didn't get to go to a football game this year together like we have the last 2 years, so that'll make up for it a little bit to be able to celebrate that together. So that's a wrap for this week's episode. If you enjoyed tonight's episode or any of our past episodes, please like, share, and subscribe here on YouTube, as those are free ways for you to support our show. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter at The Practice Squad and at Neuralizer_. Just as a reminder, if you've missed past episodes, you can watch or listen to them right here on my YouTube channel. These episodes now go up onto the playlist immediately after I stop recording on Monday nights. So go ahead and listen to them right away if you missed it. As always, thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next week.
Go Niners.